All right, so I'm going to talk through this taco parser project now. So this is basically a console application that is going to have a list of Taco Bells, and it's going to parse through it and find the two Taco Bells that are furthest away from each other in the state of Alabama. So the first thing we do is we're creating a new instance of taco logger and naming it logger. And that's just going to be used to log the information and print it to the console. And then we are creating a variable CSV path. And this is the name of the file that it is going to reference. All right, so we're creating a variable called lines. And we're using file.readAllLines to get every line in this CSV file over here. So it's going to get each individual line right now from the CSV file and store that into a string array called lines. Okay. And then here we are checking if a line is null or equal to 0, then we're going to log an error, and then we'll get the line that occurred at. Otherwise, if it's equal to 1, then we're going to log a warning and get the line that occurred at. Okay, so now we're going to create an instance of taco parser called Parser. So we'll take a look over here at our taco parser class. In that, we are again making a taco logger instance here called logger. So within the main method of the taco parser class called parse, we take in a parameter of string called line. That's the lines that we just parsed from the CSV file over here. So that's going to get passed in here. And we're going to say, we're going to log that it is beginning the parsing. Well, we split the variable line that we just passed in at the comma, because each one of these lines here is going to now become indexes. So we have index 0, 1, and 2 for each line. And that is getting stored into cells. Okay, and we're also going to log that if a cell is if the cell's length is less than 3, because we're supposed to have 3 indexes, then we're going to log an error. And once we do that, we're going to parse for the latitude down here. So we have cells at index 0. If we go back to our CSV file at index 0, that is our latitude. Index 1 is the longitude. And then last index, which is 2, we have the name of the Taco Bell. So we're splitting up each line at the commas so that we can parse it down here. So since that's a double, the latitude and longitude, we're parsing for a double, and then we store it in the variable latitude and then in a variable longitude, and then we store the Taco Bell name as a string in variable name. All right, and then that's a new Taco Bell instance called Taco Bell var, and we're using a parameterized constructor, and we're passing in the latitude, longitude, and name of the cell that we just parsed. We're going to return Taco Bell var, but we're supposed to return an iTrackable. But that's because Taco Bell conforms to iTrackable. So here's our parameterized constructor. In that constructor, we are passing in latitude, longitude, and name as the parameters. And in there, we are instantiating a new point class. And that is because the iTrackable has properties of point location and string name. And here's the point. Within point, we have latitude and longitude. So that's how we conform to the iTrackable. So we are creating this point class and setting it equal to our latitude and longitude that we passed in. And that gives us our property location, point location, and string name. So we do conform to iTrackable. So we return that Taco Bell var. That's the method to parse it. So now we have the lines, which was the individual lines. And for each one of those lines, we are going to access the parser that we instantiated, the Taco Parser class, and we're accessing the parse method within it to go through all of that stuff and parse it and return it to locations so that we have an iTrackable array of locations. Okay, so then we're going to create two variables, Taco Bell A and B, and they're going to be set to null for now. And then we have a double distance, which is also going to be 0 for now. And that's going to store the distance between the Taco Bells, and it's going to increment basically each time that the distance is greater than the previous distance. So in our for each loop, we're going to take the locations that we just parsed. It's an iTrackable array. And for each location, we're going to create a variable loc A, which is equal to location, and then core A, which is going to be loc A dot location. So basically, core A is the coordinate part, the coordinate, the point property of our location. Okay, so now we have a for loop here that we're going to use to get the B location that we're going to compare location A to and get the distance between the two. We're going to use the GeoCoordinate method of the GeoCoordinate portable, and we are going to compare the latitude and the longitude of A, of coordinate A, with the latitude and longitude of coordinate B. So after that, we're going to use get distance to location B from location A. And then we're going to store that in the geodistance. And then if geodistance is greater than distance, we set distance equal to geodistance. And that will allow us to change the value of distance to whichever is the greatest distance. If it will overwrite the previous distance if the new distance is greater. If not, it stays the same. Also, it will give us the two names of those two Taco Bells. So once we get the greatest distance, we multiply it times this number to convert it to miles, and we store that in the variable distance in miles. And then we are just going to use math.round to round it to the nearest 2 decimal points. And then finally, we're going to print out the 2 Taco Bells that are the furthest and the distance in miles between them. So let's test it out. All right. So here we had our taco logger logging what was happening. And then we have the 2 Taco Bells, Taco Bell Blue Ridge and Taco Bell Foley, I believe, are the 2 furthest Taco Bells in Alabama. The distance between them is 367.82 miles. All right, and that's the end of the program. Okay, so before I actually finished everything with the program, I created some tests to make sure that the methods that I was creating did what they were supposed to. And to do that, I used xUnit. So for the very first test, I just made it so it should do something. So I also went through and used arrange, act, and assert. And so under arrange, I first created a new instance of the Taco Parser class called Taco Parser. And then under act, I passed through a line from the CSV file and just check to see if the taco parser.parse method would do anything. And whenever you run actual through the assert.notNull method, it should return true because it should be doing something and not be null. So that's just a very basic fact test. And then we get down here to the theory test. So this, I have a test for each index of the parsing method. So we have the should parse longitude, latitude, and name. And they're all essentially the same. So we pass in a string line, and then we also pass in the expected as a double. We expect a double back for the longitude and latitude, and we expect a string back for the name. Okay, so under arrange, we create a new instance of the taco parser class and set it and store it in variable utility. And then under act, we are going to attempt to parse the longitude information from the line that we passed in as a parameter and storing that into actual. And then down here is where we assert. So we want the longitude property of the point location of the actual variable. We want to equal our expected value that we're running through. And that is how we run that test. And we want it to return true again. And then the latitude and should parse name tests are essentially the same. So we can run a test over here. All right, so if we come over here and run these tests, they should pass. All right, and since we passed these tests, that's all.